And welcome to the season premiere of the HoriZone Roundtable. Really excited to have a nice, we're getting to that point where we're getting to start basketball season up. I'm Bob McDonald. I'm still over at Campus Press Box, and I am still on Twitter, Donald. My co-host, as always, Jimmy Lemke. He is, of course, forthcoming, and he is over at PantherU.com, and you can reach him via Twitter at PantherU. And today, big day, we have ourselves a third guest with us. Paul Oren is here.
Hey, what's up?
Paul Oren, of course, the ubiquitous writer of Valparaiso basketball, and in fact, all Horizon League goings on over at the Times of Northwest Indiana. Paul, where can people find you?
On Twitter at NWI Oren, O-R-E-N.
All right.
And that's where you can find me on Twitter. And NWI.com is the newspaper website. And you've got to search like a scavenger hunt to find the Inside VU blog. But if you just Google Inside VU, NWI.com, you should be able to find it, no problem.
And Jimmy, of course, I see that you are here, so feel free to go ahead and say hello, sir.
Hello. Are we already rolling? Is that what's going on?
We are
We're rolling,
rolling.
Jimmy. We're rolling.
Well, hello everybody. I'm having a little bit of disconnection problems with my laptop, so I'm actually on my phone.
After the off season the Panthers had, I can understand why you wanted to stay away a little bit longer.
I've been disconnected for quite a while. This is actually my first real jump right back into everything. It feels good. Feels good.
Feels like just yesterday we were all hanging out at Joe Louis Arena.
And by we mean you.
Oh, I wasn't hanging out at Joe Louis Arena.
So
I wish I was.
So the one thing I wanted to talk about, just kind of to kick things off, is one of the things that did not happen this year, and which is struck me as kind of surprising, maybe not elsewhere, is that the Horizon League usually has their media day every year. This year they didn't, as it turns out. Usually they're I know the last couple of years they've been up in Chicago, but this year it just didn't really happen.
Yeah, I would say if I can chime in here that
Sure.
I think the answer to this of why it didn't happen is threefold. One, they've had it in Chicago the last couple of years, but it really seems that either Detroit or Indianapolis would be the better call. I know that last year they were considering doing it in Detroit, but they wanted to have it in Chicago because they wanted to piggyback on Big Ten Media Day. So last year they had it in Chicago the day before Big Ten Media Day, and nary a national reporter showed up to Horizon League Media Day. They were thinking that they could, if people were coming into Chicago early, they could come over and talk to Kay Felder, talk to Alec Peters, and that didn't happen. So, and then with Bill Potter and Craig Hamill, the two communication savants at the Horizon League, kind of going their separate ways this year. Both took jobs. Bill Potter at the American Athletic Conference, and then Craig Hamill at North Carolina State, and had both happening kind of relatively late in the summer. I think this year they decided against it. They did have all of the coaches down in Indianapolis to do similar type things that they've done in the past. But was it a bummer? Yeah, because they always put on a good show for the media, and it was nice to be able to go see a lot of the athletes and go see a lot of the coaches. But I can also understand, and I don't really blame the conference for not having it this year.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed to be last year, and obviously you could speak to it a little better from last year's standpoint than this year's. I know that from a Cleveland State standpoint, I know Elton Alexander from the Plain Dealer, and neither was the other main beat writer that Cleveland State has, which is Dave Glazier. I know both of them. I know Elton is. He not only does he do Cleveland State, but he's just heavy into the MAC. I mean, that's like really his thing. And then, Glazier, with everything else that's going on in the News Herald, they've got him all over the place. They've got, Division III college football. They've got him on the Cavs. They've got him everywhere. So kind of made sense to me that they weren't there.
And I would say this. I would say this, and I'm from Milwaukee,
Hmm.
so I'm from Jimmy's neck of the woods, and I've said this before. Every every school, really, with the exception of Valpo, is in a market that they don't dominate the media coverage of. And I'll be honest with you, Valpo doesn't dominate the media coverage around here too. So in this day and age of newspapers, can the Cleveland Plain Dealer afford to send Elton Alexander to Chicago, put him up for a night,
No.
and for Cleveland State men's basketball? No offense to the Cleveland State fans, but especially now with Indians, even with the Browns, every
Yeah.
week you got to write a story about who the new quarterback's going to be. It's I can
Every
see
single
why.
week.
Yeah.
Funny
What's
you
that, Jimmy?
mentioned that, by the way, because I'm gonna be. I'm sorry, Jimmy. What was that?
Well, I was going to say that the Horizon League also has a lot of costs that are just incurred by having that media day,
Yeah.
anyways. I thought they would have had some sort of media day like Skype session or
Yeah.
something,
You
just
know
so
what? That would
Yeah,
have made a lot
and
of
that
sense too.
everybody didn't question stuff.
Yeah.
honestly, I think the three of us can just host a media day right here.
Yep. See, that's what I was saying. Yeah. By the way, that's the title. That's the title of this episode. No media day, no problem. And by the way, interesting you mentioned the kind of situation over at the Plain Dealer, which, by the way, spent 5 months without between writing Cleveland State stories. So I basically spend every week making fun of that for no reason. But yeah, the landscape has kind of, especially in Cleveland, is basically unless you're we are seeing a renaissance of sorts. You've got the Cavs who won. You have the Indians. You have the Browns who are awful, but everybody loves watching a train wreck. So ultimately, you see kind of how and given kind of the change in the media, the way it's been covered based on things like cost and analytics and all that. Sad to say, Cleveland State pretty much is getting voted off the island, which is why yes,
It's the
and
nature of the
this is
business.
why apparently people come to me to read stuff every week because I'm the only one who is writing things every week, which is well, the good news is you get something every week. The bad news is it's me writing it. So there's that. So there's that.
It's kind of, I don't know. I know that Milwaukee, we have Todd Rosiak is the guy who's been doing the beat for the last few years, and he
Yeah.
really he does the Brewers too, and I'm sure that really what it is do we really care to send somebody down for another, send him down for that, and he probably could just take a couple weeks off in between the seasons.
Well, hey, I covered the Horizon League tournament for the Milwaukee paper in March because Todd was off the spring training, and so I was a pinch hitter for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, which was a big thrill for me to get
I
my name
remember
in the
you
hometown
posted that on
newspaper.
Facebook. It was a big deal for you. Yeah,
I was very excited. I have the papers not far from where I am.
I like that.
And I think to that point, I mean, you see, and it's kind of one of the drawbacks of the fact that the Horizon League's teams are by and large major market in major market cities, where the
Yeah.
consequence of that is that you are going to end up having writers with those bifurcated roles, like somebody who's covering this but also you see that in Milwaukee, you obviously see that in Cleveland, um, Chicago. I can almost guarantee that's what's going on.
Well, I don't think anybody covers, especially with sports. I don't think anybody covers one thing. Paul does several different things for the Times.
Yeah, I got high school volleyball playoffs this weekend. Get excited.
I didn't. It didn't Mark Lazarus get his current job on the Blackhawks because he was covering the Blackhawks for the Times too?
Yeah, for the Post Tribune, yes, he was doing that, and then he was tapped to be the Blackhawks writer, and then they went on strike, so they said, okay, well, we're going to put you in as the Notre Dame reporter, and so it was fun to talk to him about his Twitter followers because he basically got the entire Notre Dame fan base to follow him on Twitter, and then he started tweeting that nonstop about the Blackhawks, and apparently those two fan bases don't play nice with each other, which
That
yeah,
seems kind of
I think they'd all be
strange. I
Chicago
mean, you
people.
have Notre Dame and then you have hockey.
yeah.
Uh,
So
oh
well,
yeah, that might be it.
alas,
So,
we are less than a month away from the start of the college basketball season. I'm thrilled. I'm guessing you guys are as well.
sorta.
Yeah, thrilled is a
I don't
word.
know what
Yeah.
I don't know what I have
The
in my
team that I
team. So I
cover,
mean,
the
I
team that
don't.
I cover is picked to finish first. The teams that you guys are fans of are not picked to finish first.
No,
I mean,
no, no, not
I'm
at
really
all.
excited to see
So
Alec Peters as a senior. I think that's going to be
I
awesome.
really am too. I mean,
I just can't wait to see
so
that player.
that kind of brings me up to the team to beat is far and away Valpo, and even with the coaching change, it's really kind of doesn't matter. It does because you still have Alec Peters, you got Shane Hammock, you got all the you kind of still have that cohesiveness, and it's we're at a point where it's Valpo and everybody else beating each other up for second place at this point. Same. I think I had that same prediction. Yeah.
Well, they got to play the games, but yes, there's no question that Alec Peters is far and away the
Yeah.
best player in the league. The kid is a beast. What he's done this summer after going through the NBA workouts and then
Yeah.
going to the Nike Hoop Summit in LA, he's just a machine. The problem, the question with Peters is, can he handle all of this pressure that's on him right now? Because I can't even. Can you imagine the shoulders of not only an entire program being on a kid, but because Valpo's never really had that because they've always had a Drew to kind of deflect. I mean, that was the face of the program, and I wonder maybe Kay Felder last year, Sykes the years before, but when's the last time in the HoriZone League that a program has really been about one player?
Yeah.
And look, Valpo's got a lot of really good players, but I mean, Peters is a third-team preseason All-American, according to many different publications. That is an awful lot of pressure. And I guess how many points does he need to score in the first game of the year for the fans to say that he's living up to the expectations? I mean, does he have to score 30 against Southern Utah in the first game? What if he comes out and scores 12 points and gets 6 rebounds? Are people going to, start jumping off the bridge? I don't know.
Well, here's my thought about that because this is you brought up the preseason you too, and now I understand that obviously there's a different dynamic going on between that and the expectations of a season, but you're talking about a guy who was able to get into the pre-draft workouts and was able to really shine for NBA teams. Forget whoever forget Southern Utah or wherever else Valpo outs for NBA teams, and I think that actually brings up another point because this is actually something that I know some of the high major teams did. They said to their players, "Hey, yeah, go ahead and go into these pre-draft workouts. There's a very high likelihood you're going to end up back here, but you're still going to get the exposure. You're still going to time. So, go for it." And I think that experience really, I think that's going to, I think to me at least, I think that's going to kind of allay any of the pressure that is going to be on him right from the outset. I do think that.
I don't know. I think it adds pressure because now everybody comes in thinking that this guy is just a little bit away from being an NBA player. Does he have to perform as an NBA player against all these college kids? I mean, it's almost like he has to be like a man among boys in every single game he plays, even some of these high major games, just because he's the one that was just off the draft board for almost everybody. So I think if anything, it's going to add.
Well, is it because he is the only? Is it because he is far and away the best player in the league, and it's him? We put him up on this pedestal that we have him on, based and this separate from years past where it's always been a couple of guys. Like last year, it was him and Kay Felder. It was him and Sykes and Alec Brown. Or in years past, where you had a Gordon Hayward, you had a Norris Cole, a Shelvin Mack, and they were all playing. Is the question that we don't have that second guy that kind of stands out? Is that why now than it was previously?
I just think that
Or am I
Peters.
missing that second guy?
No, I don't think there's a second guy. I mean, Jalen Hayes is a good player, but I don't think Jalen Hayes is being looked at like those other guys have been looked at in the past. So, just the way that Peters ended last season with just this miracle run through the NIT when he's just dominated every game. Again, it's as I sit here today and I just think to myself, he's going to go down as the all-time leading scorer, the all-time leading rebounder in program history. It feels like a bonus that Valpo's gotten a fourth season out of him when he could have gone to the NBA or could have transferred anywhere else. So, look, and just what you're saying, Bob, at the beginning is that, well, Valpo's got Alec Peters. They're the team to beat, but he's still got to go out and do it. And look, I think he can, but Valpo is more than one guy, and I can also point out that there's a lot of coaches in this league that have had success against Alec Peters. I mean, Oakland has had success against Peters. Maybe some would argue that Valpo's won, a fair amount of games against them, but Wright State did a good job of kind of making life pretty difficult for Valpo last year. So it'll be curious. It'll be curious to see what happens. The other name that you mentioned, though, if we're talking Valpo, is Shane Hammonk, and this kid is going to be a beast this year. If you can buy some stock in Shane Hammonk, I'd say get on that now. I think they're going to play more of an off-the-ball role for him. What he did down the stretch of the year in the NIT run just kind of illustrates just how good he can be, and I do think that you're going to see a really, really good, motivated player here in his senior year.
It is because of that. It's because they've got that. It's because Valpo has always had that kind of more of a cohesive team dynamic to them. Is why I think is even more beyond why the Alec Peters thing is why I think they're still to win this league, and that's my primary thought on that.
And I would say that Tavon Walker, who is the third best player in Valpo's team, is probably the number one or number two best player on a lot of teams in the HoriZone League.
I would love to have him. No offense to Rob Edwards, who is going to be a very, very good guy. I'm not gonna lie. I'd love to have an Edwards Walker, tandem in that Cleveland State roster right now. So
I think that Valpo has enough of a berth in the talent gap that they're going to cruise through the HoriZone League fairly easily. I don't think anybody would be undefeated in this thing like Butler did.
And we've talked about that
one of the final 4 years.
And we've talked about that before in episodes past that nobody ever runs the table in the HoriZone League. You'll have teams that do phenomenally, but by and large, nobody's going to run the table. Yeah, prizes.
Yeah. There was one. There was one, and they were a couple inches away from. There's one, and they were a couple inches away from being national champions. So, it's definitely a heady company to be in. I do think the talent level of the HoriZone League is down this year. Overall, certainly where Milwaukee is just fallen completely apart, and that transition is just something that it's going to take a couple of years just to even get back to that.
But you got to be happy with Laval Jordan. I think he's going to be a fantastic coach there.
Oh my God, I'm thrilled. I didn't even think that he would be on the list of coaches that we could get. I was pretty excited, especially after Butler had their opening and a few years back, and he was the favorite of so many guys on those message boards. I mean, so many of them were like, "It's time for Lavelle Jordan. It's time for Lavelle Jordan. He's our next guy." And then, as it turns out that his first head coaching job is this one. I was really excited that Brad Stevens really kind of came, said, "You know what, you got to take that job." If on the surface, Milwaukee is a really great job. So it was good to see that they were able to kind of look past some of the infighting and all that stuff. But I don't know.
Amanda Braun still, didn't she?
Oh yeah, it's not like I can't read her tweets. All you need to do is just not be logged into Twitter and go to her Twitter account. It's not like it's something. Yeah.
By the way, I'm surprised I'm honestly surprised, Jimmy. Seriously, I'm honestly surprised I haven't gotten the guilt by association block yet. But that's okay. Again, I will continue to be your good cop to your bad cop.
Well, I don't know if Amanda Braun pays enough attention to Twitter to give anybody association to me. Yeah. I'm fine with it. I mean, I don't expect her to be around for forever. The thing that really kind of okay. Well, yeah, what I was gonna say is the thing that kind of just bothers me going into this year is they handle the transition. They hired Lavelle Jordan, and then they haven't really done anything else to really trim up the excitement, which is kind of annoying because the whole idea of a transition, you have to get people on it like right away, and our ticket manager, along with damn near half of the athletic department, has vamoosed. They're all gone.
Wow.
In the last 3 years, yeah.
I kind of feel like, as I was going to say, I kind of feel like this being the season premiere episode here of HoriZone Roundtable, there should have been like at the Oscars when they do like an in memoriam of all the people that have left us. There's just so many people that have left the conference and the schools, whether it be the the coaches or the kind of the behind the scenes people that
sure.
fans don't see, like the media people or a lot of the sports information directors and all that sort of thing. It's crazy. That's crazy. And time out here.
Well, we will always have Jerry Slocum.
Yes, but in all seriousness, can I take a serious moment and say, certainly rest in peace to Joel Cornette, Butler great, longtime friend of the HoriZone League.
Oh, yeah.
Crushing news.
I was so sad.
Crushing
I couldn't
news.
believe that when I read that.
I didn't mean to bring it down here, but I just felt like this was a moment to say, Joel, we love you, buddy.
Yeah.
Definitely a guy that several Milwaukee fans who had been around for a long time will kind of say that he was very much a guy that Matt Tybee, the guy who just graduated from our team, is kind of like a poor man's Joel Cornette as far as that that passion on the court. And I certainly I'll personally miss those late night Twitter trash talk sessions with Joel about Butler hoops. And I really love that. Even though Butler was gone and even though he was all graduated, I was very happy to see that Joel Cornette especially was still very much involved in the HoriZone League as a conference, still very much kept up with it, still passionate about it. So it wasn't like he was somebody who we haven't heard from for a long time. He's somebody who's been there for quite a while, and I was crushed.
The one thing I do remember about Joel Cornette, and this is actually something from many years ago, the one thing I will never forget about Joel Cornette, I think it was during their Sweet 16 run when Lick Leiter was coach. I think it was 2003. And somebody had asked him a question about, being a mid-major, getting to this point, and we're going for the championship. I mean, it was like he was prophetic in his words. I mean, this was 2000. I want to say this is like 2003, and fast forward, 7 years later, they're in the national championship game. So I always think about that when I Joel Cornette. So, but yeah, he's definitely a guy who we'll all miss.
My favorite my favorite people in the HoriZone League are people that I would describe as program guys. And whether you're talking about players or coaches or even fans, journalists, everybody, I really look at Joel Cornette as that prototypical program guy. He was definitely if you're thinking of Butler, and you're not maybe picking up a list of the best players, but the players that most embody when you think of Butler, who are the players I love to hate, who are the Joel Cornette is definitely one of those guys that's at the top of that list. He's definitely one of the people that most identifies with Butler basketball. So it just crushing, and
I agree with you.
Yeah, it was just crushing to me.
Can we transition, because I agree with you, but I don't want to bring it down too much. Is Matt Tybee one of those guys for you? I mean, 5 years from now, 6 years from now, are you still going to think of Matt Tybee as an embodiment of Milwaukee basketball, or Jimmy, did he come along at a time that was kind of like a tough, frustrating time for Milwaukee?
Well, I mean, that sophomore year of his, where we won, we got picked for ninth, go and win the conference tournament. I think that's what a lot of people remember, and I think that people are just, you think of Matt Tybee, and the guy that will have that Milwaukee uniform, and I'm sure the fans that love to hate Milwaukee would love, would be thinking of Tybee as one of those guys, because he's one of those players like Cornette. If he's not on your team, you just hate him. Yeah,
one of my favorite players of all time.
Yeah, I think as far as like involvement with the program, I think it really depends on. I think it really depends on her as how if she's still around.
Yeah.
That's the almost universal feel, and I do want to reiterate that there were only a handful of people that really thought that Rob Jeter, on camp, there were very much a handful of people that thought Rob Jeter was the right guy for the job. I was obviously one of them, and there were very few of us. But even people who didn't have, support for Rob Jeter as our basketball coach, a lot of them, were going into this season and they're saying, I really just can't get it until she's gone. And that's a little frustrating to hear, because the whole idea of transition is you have to get people excited. You have to get people excited enough that they're willing to live with a couple of years that we're going to have some pretty tough basketball for the next couple of years. And hopefully it's something that's exciting, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I look at Amanda almost like, we had these problems when she came in 2013, and the guy that we should have hired is this guy named Paul Plinsky from Whitewater, and I feel like we were sick, like we as a body, as the Milwaukee Athletics we were ill, and Paul Plinsky was the guy who's saying, all right, what we should do is we should, come in here and take some antibiotics and take some pills and start feeling better over time, and we'll start correcting things. And I really look at Amanda as this surgeon who said, all right, it's time to start cutting everything out. Let's start, let's cut all these things. Let's start slashing at the body that is Milwaukee Athletics. And then that'll, once we get the tumor out, then we're fine. And the problem is that, whatever good or bad Amanda Braun's done for the program, she's still that scalpel that's gotten sewn into the body that's Milwaukee Athletics, and it's not exactly the best thing to have a scalpel just sewn into your side. Like, I just feel like she's just, as long as she's there, she's going to be digging in and cutting into our flesh. And there's just so many people. It's like, it's hard to be excited.
I haven't even had lunch yet today.
It's hard to be excited when you know that you're going to be seeing her. I personally, I mean, we did enough. We definitely And by we, I mean, everybody who was throwing up a storm. It wasn't just me. There were plenty of people inside and outside the department. There were plenty of people who were on campus that usually don't have anything to do with athletics that were rattling the cages. We had a state senator, Lena Taylor, who's always been kind of a ancillary character in Milwaukee athletics because she's an alum and she's not really around a lot, she's around, but she's never very vocal. But it was great to see her really, kind of take a role. I don't know if, I don't know about crying racism and all that stuff, but all that really kind of pointed the university, and I think it was Mark Money that made the ultimate decision on hiring LaVall Jordan. Allegations of racism or whatnot, the fact of the matter is that in 3 years, I'm not going to be looking over my shoulder for the NCAA clearinghouse Calvary because Amanda's Choice is not our basketball coach. That's a big deal to me, and I was astounded that a guy like LaVall Jordan could even be in our. It could have even been one of our choices, and I'm really happy that he was because I think we're really off. We're really off to a great start in the near future. But man, I just it's how can we really support when it's hard? It's going to be hard for a lot of people to go to games and to see that one face up in the stands. Just really, this person that came through. When she started, there's about 40, I want to say it's 44 full-time staff members that they list on the staff directory at the university. Yeah.
Jimmy, let me cut you off for a second because I'm a Green Bay Packer fan, and I know that in 2008 when Ted Thompson got rid of Favre, I know it was hard for a lot of people to kind of be like, okay, I'm going to go support the Packers even though I can't stand Ted Thompson for doing what he did, right. But those fans still supported the team. So, and maybe that's not the best analogy, but you know what? Look, if I'm a Milwaukee fan, and I got to think that LaVall Jordan is the right choice. He's a great choice. What alarms me more than anything is that your boy Cody Wickman is the leading returning scorer this year. And so it'll probably take a year or two, but I think that the fans got to get behind LaVall Jordan.
And they're going to be there. I'm going to be there. It's just a matter of that excitement. Actually, I shouldn't say they're all going to be there. There are definitely people who are not very interested until, that face is gone. But I would say to all those people, show up and voice your displeasure. If there's something that you have a problem with, and nobody has a problem with LaVall Jordan. I think just about everybody is excited to see LaVall Jordan as our coach. It's just that it's the hard breaks of transition, and this transition was especially difficult for other reasons. So it's just gonna take time.
So you two are struggling here.
I'm sorry, what?
You've got Milwaukee that's transitioning. You've got Cleveland State, who every good basketball player is transferred out to go to bigger schools, and then I'm sitting over here as the reporter that covers Valpo and thinking, I don't know. I don't know, is it NIT? Is it NCAA tournament? It's such a juxtaposition. It's very crazy.
I think the problem for Valpo is almost going to be, does the HoriZone League give them enough talent to play against to get them ready for the NCAA and NIT this year? Do they have enough of a difficult schedule?
Yeah, they got a tasty non-conference schedule with Oregon, Rhode Island, Kentucky. Those 3 games against top 25 teams should be very good. A tournament in Vegas where they play against Alabama and then either BYU or St. Louis. They'll have good non-conference games, but then what happens after that? And look, Oakland's still going to be good. Link Darner's proven he can coach in Green Bay. It's not going to be. Valpo's, while they may be favored in every game,
we talk about transition.
They're not going to win every game in the HoriZone League. And
Milwaukee's had kind of a tough
but then
one.
again,
Admittedly.
it's too hard to go into
you had the coaching change in
9 different
Valpo,
places
but
and win
you know,
games.
and
I
to
mean,
me, it's
I
looking
really
more,
felt like we were a better team than Northern
business
Kentucky,
as
and they
usual,
dropped us at their
next man
place
up,
this year.
let's
Valpo
go. But then
set a league record last year for average
then you had
margin
other
of
coaching
victory
changes.
in
You had one
the
at Wright
conference,
State with,
and they couldn't get out of their first game in the
Scott
conference
Nagy,
tournament. So
who's an outstanding coach.
We'll
by
see
the
what
way.
happens.
I honestly cannot believe they got Scott Nagy at Wright State because he did such an outstanding job previously. And then up in Detroit, and probably one of the worst kept secrets on the planet, Bakari Alexander, getting up in Detroit. I'm curious to see how that transition works for both of those places. Yes, Detroit Mercy. We had
Next man up, exactly.
I had Carrick Jones, who's writing for Campus Press Box now. He commented on the new Detroit Mercy logo, which Tigers logo crossed with the movie Alien. So that's interesting. He had a quote about that in his he had a thought about that in his column. I'm pretty sure he got that from me because I think that was my first reaction. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting. The Detroit Mercy transition is going to be kind of interesting, especially.
And I think we have to call him Detroit Mercy now, right?
Brundage, but you still do have Chris Jenkins. So I'm going to be very interested in seeing how that's going to go. Wright State, I think, is going to be. Is also going to be. They're going to be in really good hands just because of the fact that the coach they brought in. Plus, they've got all Stork still there. I'm back too, isn't he? Yep. So, I mean, they've got a pretty good. Wright State has a pretty good core. So, I know at least one preseason publication picked them to finish last. I'm not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it.
One of my favorite people to be around in the league was Billy Donlin. I enjoyed talking to him on the record because basically talking to him on the record and off the record was the same thing because the guy really let his feelings be known. But I will say this, just a genuinely nice guy. Every conversation I had with him after every interview, he'd say, "How's your family doing? And it wasn't lip service. He genuinely cared about the people that he was around. He got a raw deal. I am just so happy to see him land at Michigan. Look, as journalists, you're not supposed to cheer for people. You're not supposed to do it. You make relationships. You enjoy the people that you're around. Everyone who works in this world of college basketball, we kind of put our own personal lives aside for a couple months, and we go out there and we do this thing. And I love being around Billy Donlin, and Scott Nagy could be great, and I look forward to get to know him. But I will certainly miss Billy Donlin in the league. Probably more so than any other person who took a new job this year.
I do feel like Billy got a bad shake at Wright State, but that's just how it is sometimes in college basketball. Yeah.
Now, this year you obviously have the transition of all these new coaches, but then you always got to ask who those coaches are going to be on the hot. I mean, and surprisingly, to nobody's surprise, you have Jerry Slocum, who's in the last year of his contract because he got his extension. That's even though I think a whole bunch of people transferred out of his. Jared Andrews, he transferred out, and a couple of other people did. And then, and I can't say that I have to say I am very surprised that his name is even coming up in as a person on the hot seat, Gary Waters. And I don't really, I can understand why. But just from a logistical standpoint, kind of having a little problem.
Let me step in on Gary Waters for a second. Jimmy, maybe you can provide your own 2 cents after this. I don't think Gary Waters deserves to be fired or let go from his job. The guy has been dealt. I play poker every once in a while. Everyone else is getting aces and kings, and he's getting 2s and 3s with his players that are transferring out of the program and all of that, and they're going to bigger programs for better opportunities. When I talked to him at the end of when Cleveland State got eliminated last year, I just saw a guy that looked tired. He just looked
Yeah.
tired. And I wonder for a guy, I mean, he's not 30 years old. So for a guy like him,
No.
maybe he's not so much in the hot seat, but does he want to do this? Does he want to continue to?
And that's the other
I mean,
question.
every time he's had a good player in the last couple of years, Forbes, Grady, Lewis, they've bolted. And
Oh,
you know
not
what's to
just
say if Rob Edwards doesn't blow up this year? He didn't go somewhere.
not just them too. They last year they weren't with a point guard for a reason. Keza Keaton left. He went off to go be in Canada and go win Canadian college basketball championships with them. And then Miles Hamilton just blew up, and that
Yeah.
whole transfer kind of blew up in his face. So that was a big issue. And here are the other thing. Here are the other logistical things that I do not, which is also why I do not see Gary Waters. First and foremost, and this is the most important part, you have an athletic director in John Perry. This is the last year of his contract. And I don't really see anybody going anywhere in the last year of his contract. He's going to spend all of his time, making sure the lacrosse program, his baby, gets off the ground, and he's not really going to worry about anything else. The other thing is that Gary Waters' last 2019, he's going to be 69 years old. Buying him out is just, from a financial standpoint, would be a Herculean effort that would involve money that Cleveland State does not want to spend, period, under any circumstances, especially in the John Perry era. So, just from a logistical standpoint, I don't see it. Now, in terms of what they're going to do now, I have no idea. And I'm saying that from a standpoint of a guy who follows them all the time, and I have no idea what they have in front of them. So, like I said in my preview, your guess is as good as mine. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I was just say, Cleveland State is still a Gary Waters coach team is going to be a tough team to go against. There's no question about that. And then you look at
Yes.
Youngstown State with what they've got going on. Turn the page. Let these guys retire. Let these guys, and yeah. But Cameron Morris would be a lot of fun to watch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Here we go. That'll be another episode.
I would say with oh god.
Yeah.
Yep. It's,
I actually yes. I actually think that with Youngstown State we might actually see one of their better years. Now, it's not it's not because they're so great. I think that they're a team that I think Jerry Slocum does a good job of bringing talented players in. I just don't think anything really gets done with them, and
Does.
there's really not a whole lot of depth. But I think the conference is so down that you may see them, more towards that middle of the pack. They could be as high as fourth or fifth if the breaks go their way. I would like to see personally if the Youngstown State's going to remain a member of my conference for the next, the foreseeable future. I would prefer that. Oh, I'm not gonna go off on my Jimmy Youngstown thing. I would just say that I would prefer them to get the I would really move to transition. Just let it. Obviously, you don't want to spend more in basketball. And if that's how you want to do it, that's how you want to do it. But let's move on and try and get somebody who can succeed with few funds. Green Bay went and got Link Darner. Youngstown State could hire a guy like Link Darner. Maybe a guy like that wouldn't be willing to go to a Youngstown State. But I really think that the returning roster has a big part to do with that. So maybe at the end of this year, you kind of just let Jerry Slocum retire, like Paul said, and then just move on to the next guy. Maybe there's somebody in Division 2 or Division 3 who is successful enough and has the drive to come in and maybe do something with a team like this for a couple of years, because Cameron Morse does have a lot of talent, and maybe they can put something together where he's putting he's putting forth that talent as part of a winning team rather than just being a guy who puts up a lot of buckets.
Sure. Speaking of fading off into the sunset, Jimmy, it is time for us to do the same. Paul, again, thank you very much for being a part of this, our season premiere. For everybody else, you can.
It's been my pleasure.
Yes, absolutely. We will be back in 2 weeks, I believe, for our next episode. You can find us on and wherever iTunes, Stitcher, you name it, wherever you can find a podcast, we're there.
Podcast people, that's what we do. We cast pods.
All right, so there you go. So until next time, we'll catch you later.